The plane crashed, but there was one faulty parachute in the cabin. In this critical moment, Jazmin gave me the last parachute. I managed to land safely, but my half-brother Noah, the child of my father's affair, perished in the crash. After we were rescued, Jazmin still chose to honor our engagement, and we had a grand wedding. However, 6 years into our marriage, she continued to harbor resentment, believing that I was the one who caused Noah's death. I was seen as her enemy, living a miserable, tormented life for 6 years. Finally, at the time of our divorce, she chose to end her life with mine at the spot where Noah died. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the crash. This time, I decided to give the chance of survival to the one she loved most. When I realized I had been reborn, the plane had already begun to shake. The crew was distributing parachutes, but when they reached me and Noah, they discovered that one parachute was faulty. After a few moments of hesitation, Jazmin still handed me the last parachute. "Elias, this parachute is for you." Seeing the pain on Jazmin's face as she handed me the last parachute, I took a step back and refused. "No need. Jazmin, save Noah first. This time, I wouldn't take on another life. I wanted to live for myself, my words." Jazmin immediately sighed in relief. She looked at me deeply, her brow unknitting, and her tone was even a little jubilant. She quickly pulled Noah to her side, placing the last parachute on his back. "Elias, you're my fiancé. I was supposed to save you first, but since you've asked me to save Noah, I'll fulfill your request." With that, she immediately pulled Noah toward the plane's exit and jumped out. She didn't even spare me another glance, as if afraid I might change my mind. How ridiculous! Did she think everyone was like her? It was her choice to make, yet after being rescued, she regretted it and my past life. She gave me the last parachute, then stayed by my side after I jumped, leaving Noah alone on the plane. But even though we immediately contacted the rescue team upon landing safely, in the vast sky, Noah's body was never found. When Jazmin first heard of Noah's death, she showed no reaction, not even toward me. She merely spoke coldly, "Just an insignificant person." She could handle all of Noah's affairs by herself while I grieved. Her only request was not to leave him buried alone, and she suggested Noah be buried in the Bai family cemetery, which had an available plot. I readily agreed, even asking if she wanted to delay the wedding. But what did she say? She took my hand and with deep affection in her eyes said, "Elias, marrying you is my lifelong wish. We can't delay our wedding for someone insignificant, can we? You know, I've waited for this day for so long. I thought she truly loved me, that she wanted to be with me forever. But later, I realized she was only marrying me quickly for the sake of that insignificant person, to torment me, to make me atone for Noah's death. However, that choice was neither forced upon her nor something I made her choose. So what does Noah's death have to do with me? This time, I gave the chance of survival to the one she loved most. She should be grateful to me." Watching their determined figures disappear as they jumped, I immediately began thinking of ways to save myself. After all, this time I couldn't guarantee that Jazmin would remember to call for help after she was safe. In both lifetimes, Jazmin's heart had always belonged to my half-brother Noah. In my past life, though there was little hope, she still contacted the rescue team as soon as we reached an area with signal. But this time, it was Noah who had gotten the parachute that represented survival. So I couldn't even hope that she would contact the rescue team immediately after jumping. If she didn't immediately announce that I was dead, I would thank my lucky stars. After all, in both lifetimes, the person Jazmin loved was Noah. In the previous life, I only learned after we married that Jazmin and Noah had known each other long before. They attended the same school, both recognized as the illegitimate children of their respective families, and because of that, they had a mutual understanding and vowed to always be together. Even our engagement was because I was the legitimate Sioux family heir, the rightful successor of all the Sioux family's wealth. So despite her loving Noah in both lifetimes, she chose to save me for the sake of the Sioux family's fortune. But in my previous life, Jazmin deeply regretted choosing to save me for the Sioux family's wealth. Now, I had made a new choice for her, and she should be grateful to me. As I watched their figures fade, I immediately ran to the cockpit. In the last life, guided by Jazmin, I slowly began to feel responsible for the plane crash. I thought Noah's death was my fault, that I had taken his chance at survival. So later, I deliberately learned how to fly, even obtaining a license, and watched countless simulations of the crash. I consulted many experts, but every time I showed the simulation to the instructors, their answers left me astounded. There were countless nights when I hoped to go back to this day. Now, my wish had been granted, and I felt an overwhelming sense of excitement. Following the experience from the previous life, I fastened my seatbelt and began to slowly control the plane's descent. After all, the reason the plane was in such a situation was entirely due to the project in City A, where both the Sioux and Bai families were the most likely contenders. In reality, the plane hadn't malfunctioned. It was just that the crew was hired by the opposing side, who had fabricated the whole incident. They had deliberately damaged one parachute to destabilize both families, aiming to secure the project in City A. But since I was back, I wouldn't let the tragedy of the past repeat itself. I sat in the cockpit, skillfully reopening the throttle, adjusting the control sticks and pedals. The engine roared back to life, and the plane, which had been descending rapidly, slowly stopped its plunge. There was even a subtle upward tilt, and with my careful adjustments, the plane's descent began to stabilize. However, after the rapid descent, the plane was now too low to reach the airport. It could only make an emergency landing. Fortunately, below was not a city full of skyscrapers, but vast mountains. I carefully controlled the plane's descent, watching as it passed over the mountain trees, knocking them down before gently coming to rest in a valley between two mountains. When I stepped out of the cockpit and stood on solid ground, I felt like I had been reborn. However, the landing site appeared desolate, with no sign of human activity, and there was no signal. In fact, there wasn't a single signal. After several failed attempts to dial the emergency number, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I gathered the remaining supplies from the plane and started walking toward the foot of the mountain, but the path was treacherous. After just a few steps, I had several scratches from the wild grass. Seeing the blood on my ankle, I couldn't even wipe it off and had to continue walking. Finally, not far down the path, I spotted a figure. I quickly called out, "Help! Wait, please, help me!" She heard me. She turned around, but as she turned, I froze in place. Vanessa. When Vanessa saw me, her furrowed brows tightened again, and she immediately walked toward me. Upon seeing the injuries on my body, there was a trace of concern in her eyes, though she quickly masked it. "What happened? How did you end up here alone?" I explained the situation as clearly as I could. After hearing it, she sighed deeply. Surviving a great disaster often brings future blessings. "Let me take care of those wounds." "Okay." I had thought that she would lead the way, but to my surprise, she gently supported me and guided me toward the car at the base of the mountain. My hand instinctively went around her neck and rested on her shoulder, and the faint fragrance of roses from her body filled my senses. Feeling a little embarrassed, I spoke up. "Vanessa, maybe you should lead the way. I can walk on my own." But Vanessa only held me tighter. "It's fine. The mountain path is difficult to walk." Seeing her insist, I didn't argue and let her guide me to the car, where she helped me into the passenger seat. She pulled out a small first aid kit from under the seat, took out some disinfectant alcohol, and gently began to clean my wounds. "Does it hurt?" "No, it doesn't." Looking at her concerned expression, I gripped my arm with my right hand, trying my best not to let the tears well up in my eyes. I remembered the last life, when Jazmin and I had just married. At a company event, a circle of people kept offering toasts, and I was worried that Jazmin might drink too much, so I urged her to slow down. She suddenly became furious and, in front of everyone, shoved me into the champagne tower when I wasn't paying attention. The champagne glasses tumbled down, and the glass shattered on the floor, with me falling into the shards. The glass pieces embedded themselves into my skin, and blood mixed with the spilled wine covered my body. I cried out in pain, and only with the help of the staff did I manage to stand up, looking at her in disbelief. But her eyes showed no warmth, and her voice was cold. "Does it hurt?" "It should. When Noah died, his body was beyond recognition. He hurt 1,000 times more, 1,000,000 times more. If it weren't for you, if you hadn't taken his parachute, he wouldn't have died. Elias, Sue, it's all your fault." I stood there in front of everyone, taking her accusation, letting her trample me into the dust. It was then that I realized Jazmin and Noah had long been deeply in love, and marrying me was just for her family's wealth. "Ha ha ha!" I laughed loudly at her, as if she were a joke. "Jazmin, do you really think I caused all of this? The plane was sabotaged by your rivals, and they deliberately damaged one parachute. You didn't blame them, but you come here blaming me? You're insane. After saying that, I turned and left, going alone to the hospital to treat my wounds. That was when my relationship with Jazmin hit rock bottom. She began belittling me in every public setting. But now, the sister who had grown up with me was careful not to hurt me, her hands light as she treated my wounds. I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Thank you, Vanessa." Suddenly, Vanessa looked up, grabbed my wrist, and stared at me seriously. "Elias, you and Jazmin may not be right for each other, but the Bai-Su marriage can still continue." I stared at her in disbelief. "Sister Vanessa, what do you mean?" But she suddenly withdrew her hand, placing a painkiller in my palm, and not continuing the conversation. "It's nothing. I'll take you home, okay?" Honestly, I didn't want to go back home. My parents had an arranged marriage, a union of two powerful families that produced me, but after I was born, each of them found their true love elsewhere. As for me, the child of their past marriage, they both agreed to leave the family wealth to me, but showed no interest in caring for me emotionally. As for Jazmin, after we married in the previous life, she never once took me anywhere public as her husband. She never allowed me to touch her, and when people asked about me, she would sneer and belittle me. Even after the company merger, she and those around me manipulated me, eating away at my shares. Because I loved her, I kept retreating, and in the end, I had no way out. Looking at Vanessa, who was focused on tending to my wounds, I bluntly asked, "I don't want to go back, Vanessa. Can I stay with you for a few days?" Seeing her silence, I gave her a pleading look, trying to appear as pitiful and hurt as possible. In the last life, she had gone abroad shortly afterward, so we didn't have much interaction. But when she found out I was getting a divorce, she returned to help me without hesitation. So, whether in this life or the last, she had always been someone who helped me. When she saw my pitiful expression, she suddenly lowered her head, her eyes burning as she looked at me. "Are you sure? Living with me will come at a cost." The sudden closeness made me instinctively take a step back, but I could still smell her unique rose fragrance, which made me feel a bit dizzy. I'll pay whatever cost." "Really? Really?" I looked at her with firm determination, and she suddenly smiled. For a moment, the atmosphere became ambiguous, and I thought we might kiss. But then she stepped back, ruffling my messy bangs. "Remember what you said." "Okay." But in the end, I still returned home. The car drove me along the way, but as we passed a gas station, Vanessa, who was holding my hand and about to buy some food, ran into Jazmin and her rescue team. "Elias, it's really you. Are you okay?" When Jazmin saw me, her eyes flashed with disbelief, followed by a look of joy. But I only gave her a cold glance, keeping my hand firmly in Vanessa's. What could have happened to me? Jazmin stared at me in shock, seemingly not expecting me to survive the fall from tens of thousands of feet. But Noah, standing behind Jazmin, caught sight of Vanessa behind me. Without hesitation, he stepped in front of Jazmin and spoke. "Elias, was it Vanessa who saved you? But how did you survive that fall from 10,000 meters and by some strange twist of fate end up meeting Vanessa? Did you two already have some connection?" What was he trying to imply? Did he think I orchestrated all of this? And you know Vanessa has been in competition with Jazmin for the Bai family fortune lately. What a coincidence that you two come out of the forest together. Elias, are you really going to claim that none of this is related to you? I took a deep breath and looked back at Noah. In my previous life, although Noah's body was never recovered, I had felt immense guilt. Besides, even though he was only a few months younger than me, I had always treated him like a younger brother. But now, it seemed like this brother didn't see me as his true sibling. Seeing that Noah was about to continue pushing the issue, I couldn't take it anymore. I strode over to him and, under his accusing gaze, threw a punch straight to his face. Slap. Noah immediately covered his face, staring at me in disbelief, and even Jazmin beside him looked at me in shock. I casually blew at the non-existent dust on my hand. The world suddenly felt so quiet. It was blissful. Then, with everyone still stunned, I raised my hand and turned to the police officer who had just arrived. "Officer, I'd like to report a slander. He's spreading rumors about me." And so, we were all taken to the police station. Noah called the police, claiming that Vanessa and I had conspired to cause the accident, while I, in turn, accused Noah of defaming us. After some back and forth, we were all taken in. While waiting for the police interrogation, Noah kept glaring at me, seemingly trying to get me to confess something useful. Elias, we're half-brothers. Jazmin is your fiancée. Are you really that heartless, wanting us both dead? I lowered my head, glancing at the bandages on my foot and ignoring him. After a moment, I spoke coldly. Do you have any evidence for all these words? You should know better than anyone what the consequences of slander are. I lifted my head and looked at him with icy eyes. Noah, have you forgotten what happened to the last person who slandered me? When I was in high school, someone was jealous of my top grades and spread rumors that I had cheated on my exams. The rumors spread like wildfire, and when my parents found out, they called the police, who arrested all the culprits. Some of them even tried to deny their involvement, claiming they had been coerced. But as the police dug deeper, they all eventually admitted their own actions. Noah's face immediately changed when he heard this. He stood there, silent, unwilling to speak further. But Jazmin, who had been listening to our exchange, was furious. She quickly pulled Noah behind her, glaring at me with disdain. Elias, what do you mean by that? The people who spread those rumors about you were already caught. Don't threaten Noah with such things. He was just voicing his thoughts. Is it really necessary for you to act like this? I gave her a cold look, with no emotion in my eyes. Since you're so sure, does that mean you were the one who designed my downfall back then? Jazmin's face instantly turned pale, but years of experience in business kept her calm. She narrowed her eyes at me and replied with a cold sneer. Elias, speak with evidence. I couldn't help but laugh. Now you want to talk about evidence? Jazmin, enraged by my words, turned pale with anger. Her voice sharpened as she tried to respond, but before she could say anything more, Vanessa walked out of the interrogation room. Seeing the scene, Vanessa immediately stepped in front of me, radiating an undeniable sense of authority. Do you still want to make a move? I stood behind Vanessa, smirking as I watched Jazmin, who seemed to be utterly flustered, eyeing Vanessa with a mix of fury and confusion. Vanessa, I'm his fiancée. Is that so? Vanessa deliberately turned to me, her icy gaze suddenly softening into a look filled with tenderness, her eyes seeming to glisten with warmth. She's your fiancée? I quickly shook my head and answered without hesitation, no. Of course not. Vanessa chuckled lightly, her voice carrying a subtle allure. She exuded a carefree, relaxed charm, especially with the way her eyes seemed to sparkle. Her gaze made everything else disappear, and I found myself unable to think about anything except those soft, inviting lips. She must be enchanting me. Otherwise, why would I feel compelled to lean in and kiss her? Jazmin, witnessing this, felt the blood rush to her head. Her face turned several shades darker, and she glared at us with obvious malice. Just as she was about to erupt, the police called me into the room to take my statement. Jazmin had no choice but to relent. By the time all of us had been interrogated, the police had a better idea of who the primary suspects were. By the time we left the police station, it was already evening. I was holding Vanessa's hand, slowly walking out through the main entrance. Just as I was about to get into Vanessa's car, Jazmin suddenly spoke up from the side. Elias, your parents already know what happened today. They're really worried about you and are waiting for you at your villa. Shouldn't you go check on them? I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. They were so worried about me that they didn't even bother to call and ask how I was doing. Instead, they just stayed at home waiting for me. What a way to show concern. Moreover, they had both already found their true loves. If it weren't for the prearranged deal to leave their assets to me, they probably wouldn't even consider giving me their wealth. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly when I thought back to my childhood. When I was little, I didn't understand why they got divorced or why they didn't want to see me. In an effort to see them, I tried so hard to excel just to make them smile a little when they signed my report cards. I wanted even the smallest shred of love from them, but even that was nowhere near what they gave their new children. Eventually, I stopped hoping. I started celebrating my own successes, whether it was getting the top score or buying myself a little cake on my birthday just to mark the occasion. And it was during this phase of my life that I met Jazmin in college. Our families were longtime friends, and the marriage contract had been set up a long time ago, though the right partner had never been chosen. After my father divorced my mother, he immediately married Noah's mother, only to later claim to have found his true love. On the Bai side, after having Vanessa, my father had a child with another woman and named her Jazmin. Though Jazmin was a bastard child, she was still brought back to the family estate and raised there. The marriage contract was supposed to be fulfilled between Vanessa and me, but when I went to university, Jazmin began to aggressively pursue me. Having never experienced love before, I completely fell for her after days of intense pursuit. I believed she liked me, no, that she loved me. That's why I agreed to go through with the engagement ceremony with her despite all the opposition from others. Even my parents seemed to prefer Jazmin to me. They saw her as capable, resourceful. They thought that after I married her, she would take charge of everything, leaving me to focus on managing the family business. To them, that was their version of love for me. So, when I eventually asked for a divorce in my past life, they naturally refused. To them, my happiness didn't matter. What mattered was that the company was well managed. I also knew that after our marriage, it wouldn't be easy for the Bai-Su families to divorce. So I endured year after year until, in the 6th year of our marriage, I finally obtained proof of Jazmin's mismanagement. I presented the evidence to her, threatening her that I would file for divorce unless she agreed. But she, now, in this new life, I was determined not to make the same mistakes again. I got into the car, glanced at Vanessa in the passenger seat, and whispered, "Vanessa, can I drive you home?" Vanessa didn't refuse. I started the car, and as we neared her house, she handed me her phone. I looked at her, confused. She spoke, her voice carrying a subtle coldness. "Tomorrow, I'll pick you up, and we'll go to the Bai family to discuss the marriage contract." I quickly entered my phone number, handed the phone back to her respectfully. "It's done, Vanessa." Vanessa parked the car neatly, then dialed my number. She waited for the sound of my phone ringing before opening the car door. "Go on. If you need anything, call me." "Okay. I will." After leaving the Bai family, I drove back home. As soon as I opened the front door, I saw my parents sitting on opposite ends of the couch, each of them silent, but the tension in the air was palpable. Before I could even take a step toward the sofa, my father immediately stood up and started berating me. "You're already this old. How can you still act like this? Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed today to wait for you? I turned down a multi-million-dollar business dinner just to be here. And you, since when can you fly a plane? How come I didn't know about that?" In his fury, my father slammed his hand on the table, pointing at me, his voice rising in anger. "Noah was only asking you a few questions at the police station, and you threatened him like that. Where's your sense of being an older brother? And what's going on with you and Vanessa? Don't forget," before my father could finish, my mother picked up a vase from the table and threw it at him. "Diego, what do you mean by that? How dare you criticize Elias over a bastard child?" Diego, stunned by the broken vase on the floor, quickly shifted his attention to my mother. Did I go against the agreement? Even with Noah, I still left most of the inheritance to Elias. But you, seeing things were escalating, I could no longer tolerate it and shouted, "Enough! Stop arguing! If you want to fight, go outside and do it." They both froze, stunned by my outburst, then fell silent, returning to the tense quiet from when I first entered the house. Once they were quiet, I sat down on the opposite sofa and spoke directly. "I'm breaking off my engagement with Jazmin." "No." Before I could even finish, my father immediately rejected my proposal. "That marriage was arranged when you were just a child. You can't cancel it over something as trivial as this." "I don't agree." "You don't disagree," my mother shot back. "You just want Elias to marry Jazmin, take our assets, and then let your bastard son take over." My mother was utterly furious now, pointing at Diego. "Don't think I don't know. Your bastard child and Jazmin have been secretly colluding all this time. I see through both of your schemes." "Mom," I was shocked. She knew. She knew everything. So why was she still insisting I marry Jazmin? Why did she reject my divorce in the past life even though she knew all along? My mother, slightly flustered, spoke. "Who you marry doesn't matter. At least Jazmin has the ability to help you manage the company. If you find someone better, I'll support you in calling off the engagement." I bitterly smiled. So this was it. None of them truly loved me. I stood up and declared, I won't cancel my engagement with the Bai family. I'm going to marry Vanessa. Diego seemed about to argue but stopped when he saw my mother's expression. He reluctantly fell silent. The next day, I woke up to see my mother's car parked outside. As soon as I came down, she motioned for me to get in. Let's go. I'm taking you to the Bai family. The drive was quiet. By the time we arrived at the Bai family estate, Noah had already gotten there before us. Seeing my mother and me enter, Noah proudly wrapped his arm around Jazmin's waist, looking at my mother with smug satisfaction. My mother merely glanced at him with disdain and then immediately got to the point. We've come here to discuss the marriage contract. Grandma Bai liked me, but because Jazmin's mother was now in charge, Grandma's voice had little weight in the household. Especially when Jazmin heard what we had come for, she immediately grabbed my hand. You want to break off the engagement with the Bai family? I pulled my hand back, and before I could respond, Vanessa appeared from upstairs, walking over to me and taking my hand. We're not breaking off the engagement with the Bai family. We're breaking off with you. He's my fiancé now. Jazmin glared at our joined hands, her voice shrill with anger. Why? I smiled coldly and met her gaze. Why? Don't you know? Your beloved Noah is perfectly fine and standing right beside you. Shouldn't you be happy? Jazmin's eyes faltered for a moment before shock overtook her expression. She knew I knew, and I knew she knew. But this was our secret, something we both understood but would never say aloud. Seeing the tension, Grandma Bai sighed in resignation. Elias, we owe you an apology. Don't worry, when you marry Vanessa, all the shares under my name will be transferred to you both. I smiled and turned to Grandma Bai. Thank you, Grandma. I'll have it officially announced by 10 a.m. today. With that, I left the Bai family estate with Vanessa. I didn't expect Jazmin to chase after us. Elias, I can explain. The reason I did what I did back then, I simply turned and got into Vanessa's car, rolling down the window and mockingly glancing at Jazmin. You regretted it back then, so now you should cherish him even more. As soon as my words left my mouth, the car window slowly rolled back up. Vanessa squeezed my hand and spoke firmly. There's no need to say more to her. She doesn't deserve it. Yeah, you're right. I tightly gripped her hand in mine. We spent the entire day in a villa on the outskirts of the city, enjoying our time together. By the next morning, I packed up and got ready for work and my previous life. Even though I had landed safely, I was still shaken, which caused me to miss out on the A-City project. Jazmin, on the other hand, had no competition and smoothly secured the A-City project. Watching the project double her assets, it was clear to me just how valuable it was. I wasn't about to let that slip by again. While I was working non-stop, Noah came by the office to find me. Elias, this project is really important to Jazmin. Could you not? No. I firmly rejected him, as I had in my previous life. I wasn't stupid enough to believe that they had pure intentions. If I hadn't threatened Jazmin with evidence of her mismanagement and forced her into divorce, she would have tortured me for even longer. But just as we were about to proceed with the divorce, she suddenly changed her mind, stabbing me with a knife and setting fire to the villa. She claimed it was all because of the debt we owed Noah, but in the end, she was the one making the decisions, not me. I didn't want to waste any more time with him and ordered for him to be kicked out of my office. While I was fully focused on securing the project, Jazmin didn't give up. She called me non-stop, and as I kept blocking her numbers and finally warned her I would report her to the police if she kept harassing me, she finally fell silent for a while. 2 months later, after my persistent efforts, I successfully secured the A-City project. To celebrate, Vanessa and I had an impromptu night of passion that lasted until morning. The next day, I walked into the office, full of excitement to take the company to new heights. But when I arrived, I saw Jazmin standing outside my office, holding a bouquet of flowers. Elias, I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I didn't want to deal with her. I just wanted to get to work, so I sarcastically responded, if you're sick, go see a doctor. Don't come bother me. As I turned to walk away, Jazmin stood up and tried to grab me, but in the process, she accidentally yanked my tie off, revealing the red marks on my neck. Elias, I snatched the tie from her hand. You're sick. But Jazmin wouldn't let up, her eyes filled with desperation. Elias, I really regret it. I know I was wrong. If you forgive me, I'll do anything you want." I sneered, lowering my head to look at her, speaking in a tone only the two of us could hear. "What do you regret?" "Regretting how you treated me in the last life. Don't you know late remorse is worth less than dirt?" Her face drained of color, her whole body turning pale as she looked at me in shock. I was about to walk past her and head to my office, but she suddenly dashed ahead of me, rushing toward the window. Half her body was leaning out of it, and she screamed, "Elias, if you won't forgive me, I'll jump right now." I looked at her in disbelief. Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared behind me, pulling me toward her and wrapping herself around me. "It's fine. If you jump now, your mother will be thrown out of the house tomorrow." "You?" Jazmin stared at Vanessa in disbelief, clearly not expecting this kind of blunt threat from someone who had always been so gentle. Fuming, Jazmin climbed back inside and gave me one last longing look as she left the building. I didn't care. My marriage to Vanessa was moving forward quickly, and there were so many things to plan for. When I heard about Jazmin again from a friend, it felt like a lifetime ago. My friend told me that Jazmin had been forced to leave the country by Vanessa. I shook my head. With everything going on at the company during the day and spending time with Vanessa in the evenings, I had no energy to worry about anything else. It was through my friend that I found out my father had found yet another true love. This new love even gave him a son, and as always, Diego quickly abandoned Noah and his mother, marrying this new woman. Watching himself get cast aside, Noah snapped. He took all the money from Jazmin's company and fled the country with his mother. Jazmin had no choice but to strike a deal with Vanessa. If Vanessa helped her and her mother escape abroad, Vanessa would give her a sum of money for their peaceful retirement. Naturally, Jazmin agreed and left for another country. But what I didn't expect was that on the day Vanessa and I were getting married, I received the news that Jazmin had been arrested. She had truly been fated to be with Noah. Otherwise, they wouldn't have run into each other on a foreign street. It was an encounter filled with hatred. The street was notorious for being lawless, and Jazmin shot Noah in broad daylight before being arrested by the police. But all of this had nothing to do with me anymore. Now, sitting on the couch with Vanessa's clothes in my arms, I playfully whined, "Vanessa, those new clothes I bought for you are so cute. Could you try them on for me?" Vanessa shot me a glance, her face flushed in embarrassment. "Do you really consider these to be proper clothes with so little fabric?" "Of course they are.